Well, welcome back, class. This is John Volkman. We're going to talk a little bit today about original cataloging. If you receive a book that doesn't come with a marked record and you can't find it in Library of Congress, then you can catalog it yourself on your cataloging program on your computer. The book I have today, called The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien, we're going to use for our example. So if you go to the cataloging page, or for the class, if you use the paper that we have, this also shows you how to fill that paper out, because we're going to just fill in the major categories. If you have a pre-made record, it's going to have a lot of other things you really don't need to put in when you do it by hand. So I want to point out to you the most important marked fields to be sure that you enter. So first of all, we want to look on the back of the title page. That's typically where you're going to find the ISBN. I've written it in here on the 020 field. The next thing we're going to look for, and this is going to be on the title page, is the author. Author goes last name Tolkien, comma J period R period R period J.R.R. Tolkien. In this case, there is a fuller name. That's the Q tag that goes in there, and you put that in parentheses. John Ronald Rall is his actual names. And then for the dates, 1892 to 1973. Now, a word on the dates. If you have a famous author, you have previous books, that's an easy way to get the authors. If you're getting new books, I wouldn't bother to look up the dates, just leave that field blank. And in most cases, you're not going to have a fuller name. Somebody famous like that, that is helpful. Then the 245 field is the title, so we're going to put in The Hobbit, and since this title starts with the word the, we need to put a 4 in that field to indicate that the first 4 characters are skipped when you're alphabetized. So it's skip T-H-E space, and it will start with Hobbit. If you don't put that 4 in there, you'll find that the title will be looked up under the, and you don't want that to happen. So make sure you put a 4 in that tag, in that little square right there, to indicate that you skipped 4 spaces. And in this case, there is a subtitle for this book. And let me grab this paper. Our subtitle is Or There and Back Again. Then we go down to the 260 field, place, publisher, copyright date, and you'll find the place and the publisher usually on the bottom of the title page. So the place here was New York. And it's Ballantine Books. Actually, that should be a colon. And the copyright date is 1966. Now notice I put in a colon here after New York. Ballantine Books, there's a comma, and then there's a period at the copyright date. Most of the programs today, you don't need to put the punctuation marks in there. The program will probably do it for you, but you might experiment, because if you do put it in and they also put it in, then you end up with double. So double check to see what your program does, but most of them seem to put in the punctuation for you on that. The series, if you have a book that is part of a series, many of your patrons do look up books by series, and that's an area that I like to make available. If there's a certain order of a series, I like to put that order number in there. In this case, we're just going to put down Lord of the Rings, because it is part of that series. The other field we want to talk about is the subject field. A lot of fiction books, you may not have any subjects at all. In most cases, you're not going to have more than 1 and 2. But for this book, it is a fantasy book, so I will put fantasy into the 650 subject field. And that's pretty much all you're going to need to do in most books. Just enter 1 or 2 subjects. Most of the other fields you probably aren't going to have to do when you're doing original cataloging. If you have a pre-made catalog card, I wouldn't take the time to go and delete fields just leave them in there. Somebody may look at it, but it doesn't take up space, but it does take up your time to go in there and delete that. So I wouldn't worry about that. It's not like you have to file catalog cards for all those anymore. So just leave stuff in there, and that would be fine. So then the next thing you would do with a new book is you'd go to the Add Copies section of your computer program, and that's where you would put in probably the barcode number, and it would also look for the call number. So in this case it's going to be Fiction, FICTOL, and then you put in the price. Recommendation that I have on putting in prices is I look at the price on the book and maybe it's $7.95. I don't like to bother with the cents, so my rule is just round it up to the nearest dollar. So in this case I would put down that it's $8. It just makes it a lot easier if your patrons need to pay for books if you just have rounded dollar amounts. You don't need to mess around with the change that way. It's just a lot easier, and when you round up, in a way you're helping to pay for the processing cost. So I always say round up to the next highest dollar.